Hello, and welcome to the curriculum preview for the sixth 6 weeks for first grade science. We're going to talk briefly about our second life science unit, which is organisms in the desert biome. So just a quick overview and reminder of our biome view that we have in Birdville for our life science. Last 6 weeks you focused on the forest, and then this 6 weeks we'll focus on the desert, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like and the difference between last 6 weeks and this 6 weeks. So just as a reminder, we're going to use general biomes and environments, so anything that's found in STEM scopes and aims, to really introduce and have the kids understand the concept of the life science standard. The desert view really only comes in when we talk about application and looking at examples of those particular concepts in that specialized view. So the desert doesn't have to drive everything you do. It just is another application or another example of some of the standards that you guys are teaching right now. So let's take a look at our options for teaching the life science standards in the last 6 weeks. You have two options for pacing. This was similar to what we had last 6 weeks too. I don't expect for you to be able to read this, but visually, basically option one is on the left-hand side, and you've got these little mini units that are represented by the rows. And so the way that these would be set up is when you're doing 1.9a, which would be this row, you would break that into 5 class periods. And the first 3 class periods, you would just teach that particular life science standard. This is basically living and non-living things, focusing on basic needs and producing offspring. You're going to use whatever environments are in STEM scopes and aims for whatever lessons you're going to use. And then on Thursday, you would look at what that looks like in the desert. So there's this little icon right here to remind you that you'll dip into that view weekly, depending on whatever content standard. So the next week we've got a different standard. We'll teach it in general environments, and then we'll look at it in the desert. So what basically students are doing is looking at those things differently once a week. Option two, which you see on the right hand side, is where you do all of your content teaching up front in the first couple of weeks of the 6 weeks, and then you have about a 10-day, 2-week period to do a research project that could be focused on those life science standards in the desert. So that provides you an option for integrating with reading and writing if you'd like to do that. So you have a nice big block of time to incorporate some of those things. So again, just like last 6 weeks, that's up to you and your team, however you would like to do that and approach that. So I'm going to kind of quickly go through some examples of what that looks like, and you can pause this and take a look. If this is something that you've not really looked at before, you can pause it, the screen, and take a look at this more in depth. But this basically kind of shows you the option one, what that would look like. And then here is just a little bit of a different view for that one. For option two, there's a mistake right here that should say option two right there. So sorry. This shows you how that would look there. Okay, so always I like to direct you to the unit overview because we've got a lot of great examples of resources in there. So I want to hit on a few highlights. So I'm going to pull over your unit overview. And I just want to point out a couple of things in here that'll be of use for you. First of all, just want to remind you that there's the pacing guide that we were just looking at there. We've got all the clarifiers linked with the vocabulary right here. The guiding questions, I just wanted to point out to you that the guiding questions, I actually have 2 columns for you. So your students should be able to answer either verbally or writing or via some sort of assessment the questions on the left. And those just would be general applications. So for instance, what basic needs must be met for living things to survive? So by the end of the unit, your students should be able to answer that in some way. When we look at the desert biome, what I've done is I've created a parallel set of questions so you can ask that within a desert application if that's what you want to do. So for instance, the guiding question that's very general is what are basic needs that must be met for living things to survive. And then we would just tweak that a little bit for what are some living and non-living things in the desert. And we could talk about their basic needs. And of course, basic needs in the desert is going to have a high emphasis on making sure that they have enough water, because that's a limiting factor in the desert, unlike the forest that we talked about last 6 weeks. So it provides some opportunity for some compare and contrast, which are really great opportunities for your kids to do some higher level thinking. I'm just going to kind of scroll through, just remind you there's lots of resources here for you. Kind of the key concepts are broken down for each of the standards. And I'm just going to scroll down to a couple of things on the resources I want to point out. So I've changed up the organization of the resources a little bit from last year when we were in forethought, and I'm hoping that this will be a little bit more user-friendly. What I've done is I have taken all of the desert resources and put them up here at the very beginning. So you can see it says right here, resources for Elaborate, desert activity guides, lessons, and ideas. So these are all going to be things that deal with the desert specifically. And then I've also got some comprehension toolkit articles that I've aligned that focus in with the desert or the process skills as well. So instead of trying to embed those and line those with every standard, I just bundled those up here at the top. So I just wanted to point out that that difference there. A couple of the other things I wanted to show you too is wanted to make sure that you knew about, excuse my scrolling here, a couple of new resources that we have in the science lab for 1.10c. And that's where we look at comparing young animals and their parents. There's actually two sets of animals, one on the farm and one in the jungle, that are mothers and their babies. So I just want to make sure that you look over here on the resources page and make sure that we can use those if we need to. Okay. All right. Okay. And just to wrap everything up, if you are having issues remembering how to get to the unit overview, there's instructions on how to do that. And then I just kind of want to wrap up just reminding you what hands-on looks like in life science. If we can get real plants and animals into the classroom or take our students out into even the campus, gives us a great opportunity to really look at some of the things that we're studying in the classroom in the real world. I mean, you'll see a couple of examples for some primary science right there, and then on this screen as well. So you can kind of read that slide there too, but I get this question a lot, like, Brenda, what exactly does a lab look like when we do life science? So I thought some visuals would help you. And then finally, I just wanted to alert you for some upcoming changes for the science standards next year. TEA has streamlined the science standards from kindergarten all the way up through high school. And then there are several changes for every grade level. This is not exactly a rewrite for all the standards, but it does have an impact for your grade level as well as vertically. So I just wanted to kind of give you a visualization of maybe why they wanted to streamline the standards. This is a fifth grade science teacher and math teacher who printed out all of the standards that they have to cover in a year for math and science. Math is on the left and science is on the right. So I think when they were getting some feedback from teachers about the scope and the depth of the science standards, that's what really prompted that. So this is the first content area that's ever done this before, so kind of new territory for us. I've been working really hard over the last 2 years to try to make sense of this so I can give you a really clear-cut document that shows you, and this is just some of my notes that I've been kind of working on, but I just really wanted to show you that there's been changes in every grade level and in several different places. So how will you know what's happening? If you really want to know what those look like right now, you can actually go to the TEA page. I put the link right there, and you can see what those standards changes look like at your grade level. In addition, this summer, I'll have a session that will be optional if you'd like to come and learn all about the science streamlining and what it looks like in your grade level, and maybe get a peek of what the curriculum changes are. you're welcome to join us, and that'll be in the catalog for professional development this summer. But everyone will be required to attend a session in our August PD Day for the district. So you will definitely get the overview of what's happened in your grade level, what impacts it will have. You'll see the new curriculum documents, any changes to scope and sequence. So we'll have a great 3-hour session that'll lay everything out for you. But if you want to know more about it right now, there's options for you to find out. So thank you so much for joining me. And as always, if I can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope you have a great last 6 weeks and a safe and restful summer.